In this lesson, we're going to look at adding and subtracting algebraic fractions. Quick recap before we start. If we have just a couple of standard fractions like this that we're adding, remember we need to have a common denominator to add them. They're different at the moment. We need to find the lowest common multiple they both go into. So in this case, that's 6. And then find equivalent fractions for both. So if we multiply this fraction by 2, we'll get 4/6. Multiply this fraction by 3, we'll get 3/6. And when we've got that common denominator, when we're adding or subtracting, we keep that. And then here we're just going to add the top. 4 plus 3 gives us 7/6. Likewise, if we're subtracting, we need a common denominator on the base. Now, people sometimes jump in and just think we'll do 4 times 8, so we'll do 32 on the base of our fractions. But sometimes there is an easier way, and with algebraic fractions, this can make a real difference. The lowest common multiple of these two is 8. So we're just going to double top and base of this first fraction to get 6/8. We can leave this second fraction just as it is. And again, adding or subtracting with a common denominator, we keep that. And then on top it would be 6, take away 1. You can also write this middle step here as this. And to keep it tidy, to keep it neat, you'll increasingly see that as I'm going through the examples today. So in this first example, we've got x over 3 plus 2x plus 1 all over 2. So we need to find a common denominator for these. The lowest common multiple of 3 and 2 is 6. So we need to multiply the first fraction by 2, which will give us 2x on top. We need to multiply the second fraction top and bottom by 3. And I'll start by setting it out like this. We then need to tidy this up. So we've got 3 times 2x, 3 times 1. And that's the simplest form we can write this in. Second example, we've got 3 over x minus 1, take away 4 over x. So again, we need to find a common denominator for both of these. Now, the lowest common multiple for both of these would be x minus 1 times x. So let's multiply this first fraction by x, multiply the second fraction by x minus 1, and we are subtracting this. So if we expand those brackets, now be careful with the negative here. So we've got negative 4 times x. We've got negative 4 times negative 1. And that's over x times x minus 1. Last step is just to tidy up. And we do just want to leave the denominator there factorised as it is. 2 examples for you to do. Pause the video, have a go. The lowest common multiple in this first example will be x plus 1 times x minus 1. So the first fraction we're multiplying by x minus 1. Second fraction we're multiplying by x plus 1. We'll expand our brackets, so 2 times x and 2 times minus 1 plus 3 times x, 3 times 1. And as before, we'll keep the denominator here factorised, we'll keep it in the brackets. Second example, we had x plus 1 all divided by 2, take away x minus 1 all divided by 3. We're looking for the lowest common multiple of our denominators here, which will be 6. So multiply this first fraction by 3. second fraction by 2. And remember here we're taking away, so we're going to have to be careful of the negative. We expand our brackets, 3 times x, 3 times 1. Then we've got minus 2 times x, minus 2 times minus 1. Tidying up. And that's the simplest form we can put this in. This is your first task. Spend about 10 minutes on it and choose your level of challenge. You can see it's differentiated into 3 levels there. We'll look at a few harder questions here where we need to factorise the denominator before we start to add or subtract the fractions. So on this first one, this is the bit we can factorise. So this will all stay the same. Now remember, this is the difference of 2 squares, because we've got x squared here and we've got 1 squared here, and we're taking that away. So there's a lot of work we did on this yesterday. It popped up in a lot of the questions. You might just remember we can write this as x minus 1 in brackets multiplied by x plus 1 in brackets. And you can see here we've got the square root of x squared. Here we've got the square root of 1. And then we've got 1 take away, 1 add. If you can't remember, that's not a problem. Just remember, if you get something like x squared minus 1, we can think of that as being x squared plus 0x minus 1. And then we're looking for a pair of numbers which add to 0 and multiply to negative 1. And we know this, but if they've got to add to 0, one must be positive, one must be negative with the same digit value. And here with this, it's going to be negative 1 and 1. So don't worry if you can't remember the difference of 2 squares, just remember to set it out like this. Now you might be able to see now why it's been useful to do this. So when we're looking for the smallest common denominator we can use, we can see here we've got x minus 1, we've got that over here as well. So for our common denominator, we can use x minus 1 multiplied by x plus 1, and this numerator here will just be staying the same. For this fraction, we need to multiply it by x plus 1. So it's just 1 times x plus 1. And then we can tidy this up. And there's our answer. Pause the video, have a try with this example. Again, we can factorise the denominator of our first fraction. Again, we've got the difference of 2 squares. So we can write this as x minus 2, x plus 2. And the reasons for that, the square root of x squared is x. The square root of 4 is 2. And then we've got 1 take away, 1 add. So putting this in place, and again we can see why this is helpful here, because we've got x plus 2 here, we've also got it over here. So for our denominator, we can just use x minus 2 times x plus 2. This 2 will stay just as it is, but we're multiplying this second fraction by x minus 2. So that's going to be 1 lot of x minus 2, and we just need to tidy it up. And that's as far as we can simplify our answer. So pause the video here and have a go at task 2. This is the last step of today's lessons, and we're going to build on what we've looked at so far with adding and subtracting algebraic equations and use those skills to solve them. The first thing we're going to do here is simplify this by adding our two fractions. So we need to find our smallest common denominator we can use, which will just be 2x minus 3 all multiplied by x plus 1. So we're multiplying the first fraction by x plus 1, the second fraction by 2x minus 3, and we're adding those. So that's equal to 1. We haven't changed it. It's still equivalent to 1. We'll multiply out of our brackets. And tidy up the numerator. Now, if we were just simplifying the fraction, we would leave it like we've got here in this step. But solving the equation, we need to go on to find what x is. So here we are going to need to multiply out these brackets on the base. Now we can either do that now, or we can multiply both sides by them first. Either way doesn't matter. I'll multiply both sides with them first. We'll have x squared plus 9x minus 12 is equal to 1 times 2x minus 3 x plus 1. And I'll expand the brackets now. So whichever method you use for this, and then we need to make our quadratic equal 0. So if we take away x squared from both sides, we're going to take away 9x from both sides. And here we've got minus 1x already, so we'll have minus 10x. We're going to add 12 to both sides. So we've got our quadratic equal to 0. We need to factorise this. So we're looking for a pair of numbers which are going to add to negative 10 and multiply to 9. So that's got to be negative 1 and negative 9. We factorised it, so the last step to solve it, we know we need to make either this first bracket equal 0 or this second bracket equal 0, and we do that if x is equal to 1 or x is equal to 9. Pause the video and try with this example here. So here we use 3 times x minus 1 for our denominator. So we're multiplying this by x minus 1. We're adding, and we're multiplying this by 3. Now, in this example, I'll expand the brackets out now. And then we want to multiply both sides by the denominator. So on this side, we've got 12x take away 12. If we take away 12x from both sides, add 12 to both sides, we now have our quadratic equal to 0. And we're looking for a pair of numbers which add to negative 13, but multiply it to 42. It's got to be negative 6 and negative 7. So we can factorise it to x minus 6 in one bracket, x minus 7 in the other. So to solve it, we know we've got to find the values for x, which will make either bracket equal to 0, and that will be x equals 6 or x is equal to 7. You can stop the video here and have a go with this last task.